The cop looked me dead in the eye and said, "Ma'am, unless you prove otherwise, you're the one who committed this fraud." I never said no to my brother. Not once. Not when he needed help with rent. Not when he asked for money for his car repairs. Not even when I knew deep down that I was being used. I always told myself, he's my little brother. He'd do the same for me. But now when I look back, I realize how blind I was. I built my construction company from nothing. Just me, a pair of steel-toed boots and a second-hand pickup truck. When I started out, I was working 16-hour days, pouring concrete in the rain, fixing roofs in the freezing cold. Most people never saw that side. All they saw later was the office, the trucks with my company's logo and my name on the side of a building. But I earned every brick of it. Alone. Jake, on the other hand, was always different. He was 5 years younger than me. Charming, funny, the kind of guy who could make anyone laugh at a dinner table. He had this way of pulling people in, including me. But behind the charm was someone who never really figured things out. He dropped out of college, said it wasn't for him. Tried working a few jobs, but he never lasted long. There was always something. A rude boss, an unfair system, or some grand plan that never worked out. And every time he failed, he came to me. The first time he asked for money, it was just $300. He said he needed it for groceries and rent, and of course I didn't even think twice. Then came $800 for a broken-down car. Later it was $1,500 to start his own business, which never even got past the idea stage. I should have drawn a line, but every time he looked at me with those sad eyes, I gave in. I convinced myself I was doing what any big sister would do. And then there were our parents. They always played peacekeepers, constantly defending him. "He's still growing," Mom would say. "He just needs a break," Dad added. I can't tell you how many times I heard, "You're the strong one, honey. Just be patient with him." So I swallowed my frustration and stayed quiet. I didn't want to be the bad guy, the sister who turned her back. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. When Jake got evicted from his apartment, he didn't even ask before showing up at my door with 2 trash bags full of clothes and a half-smoked cigarette hanging from his mouth. I didn't have the heart to turn him away. I let him move into the guest house out back. It was supposed to be temporary, just until he got back on his feet. That's what he promised. And once again I believed him. He stayed there for months. Rent-free. Bills paid. I even stocked the fridge for him sometimes. He slept in while I left at 6 a.m. every morning to check job sites. He watched TV while I answered emails late into the night. Sometimes I'd catch him partying out there with friends, laughing like he didn't have a care in the world. But every time I tried to bring it up, he'd shrug and say, "I've got something lined up. Just give me a little more time." And like always, I gave it. I gave and gave, time, money, space, trust, because deep down I wanted to believe he'd change. I wanted to believe that one day he'd get it together and stand on his own. I didn't realize then that what I thought was love was actually me making excuses for someone who never intended to grow up. Then came the girlfriend. I remember the first time I saw her. Long blonde hair, designer sunglasses, and heels too high for our gravel driveway. She stepped out of Jake's car like she was walking onto a runway, not into a guest house behind a construction site. Her name was Tiffany, of course it was. And just from the way she looked me up and down, I knew she wasn't here for small talk. Jake introduced her with that same smug grin he always wore when he thought he was doing something big. "This is Tiffany. She's a model," he said proudly while she scrolled on her phone, barely nodding at me. From that day forward, things shifted. Suddenly Jake had a reason to spend more money than he'd ever earned. He started showing up in expensive clothes, buying gadgets, ordering takeout like money grew on the tree outside the guest house. And of course, every few days he'd come to me with some new reason he needed help. "Come on, sis," he said one night, leaning on my kitchen counter like it was his own. "She's different. I just want to show her I've got things together." "Then get things together, Jake," I snapped. "With your own money." He flinched like I'd slapped him. I think it was the first time I'd ever told him no flat out. I didn't yell, didn't lecture. I just stood my ground. "I've helped you for years, Jake. You've eaten my food, slept under my roof, burned through every dollar I gave you. I'm done being your wallet." He tried to laugh it off, but I saw something in his eyes. Not hurt, not regret. Something colder. Like he'd already made other plans. A few days later, I was in the middle of a site meeting when I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was a woman from a luxury car dealership downtown. He sounded cheerful, almost excited. "Hi, Miss Carter. Just confirming delivery of your new BMW. The financing documents are all set, and the car will be ready this afternoon." I froze. "What car?" She paused. "The 5 Series? You were approved last week. We have your signature and ID on file." I cut her off. "I never signed anything." She hesitated. We have a copy of your driver's license and your signed documents. Maybe you want to come in and take a look." I drove there immediately, heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't bought a new car in years, didn't need to. My old truck still ran fine. The idea of me walking into a dealership for a BMW felt absurd. But as soon as I saw the paperwork, my stomach dropped. There it was. My name, my address, even my driver's license number. And next to it, a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. I stared at it, numb. My hands were shaking. Then I saw the second signature, scribbled beside mine. One I'd recognize in my sleep. Jake. I couldn't believe it. No, I didn't want to believe it. But everything inside me screamed the truth. He had taken my ID. He had forged my name. He had pretended to be me just to get his hands on something flashy to impress Tiffany. And worse, he had put it all in my name. That car, that loan, that debt, it was all mine now. The manager came in to talk to me, concerned and confused. I couldn't even speak for a moment. I just kept looking at that paper, the ink still crisp, like the betrayal hadn't even had time to dry. I drove home in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something inside me had cracked. For the first time, I didn't see Jake as my brother. I saw him for what he really was. A liar. Thief. And worst of all, someone who didn't care who he hurt as long as he got what he wanted. And then the cops came to my office. It was a Tuesday morning just like any other. I was reviewing blueprints with my site manager when I saw 2 uniformed officers walk through the front doors of my construction firm. For a second, I thought maybe they were here about a permit issue or to ask about a recent site inspection. But then one of them asked for me by full name and held up a folder. "Miss Carter? We need to speak with you about an open investigation into identity theft and loan fraud." My heart stopped. Right there, in front of my staff, clients and contractors. All eyes were on me. I felt like the walls were closing in. They didn't arrest me, not yet, but they asked me to step outside and answer some questions. I could feel my employees whispering behind me as I walked out with the officers. I didn't even have the strength to explain. My face was burning. I built that company from the ground up, brick by brick, and now I was being treated like a criminal on my own property. Outside, they asked about the BMW. I told them everything. How I found out about it, how my ID and signature had been used without my permission. I explained it had to be my brother. I even gave them his full name, his old address, and told them about Tiffany. They took notes but made no promises. One of them said kindly, "Unfortunately, family cases can get complicated. You'll need legal support." Legal support. That's when I realized how serious this was. I hired a lawyer the next day, someone who specialized in fraud and financial crimes. I gave her every document, every screenshot, every email I could gather. She was calm but firm. "We're going to fix this," she said, "but it won't be easy. And it won't be quick." Then came the next blow. While going through my accounts with the lawyer, she noticed something strange. 2 credit card accounts I didn't recognize. Both opened under my name, both carrying high balances. I felt dizzy as we pulled the statements. Thousands of dollars charged for jewelry, hotel stays, flights to Miami, restaurants. All things I never bought. But I didn't need to guess who had. Jake had done it again. It wasn't just the BMW. He had opened credit cards using my information, maxed them out, and vanished. My name, my credit, my entire financial reputation, he had dragged it all through the mud without a second thought. Then my accountant called. "We've got a problem," she said. "The bank froze the company account. They flagged suspicious activity linked to your name. Until it's resolved, we can't move money in or out." That was it. I felt like I couldn't breathe. No money meant no payroll. No supplies. No fuel for equipment. My entire business, the business I had built over a decade, was at risk because my little brother wanted to impress a girl with someone else's credit. I went into the break room and locked the door. I sat on the floor and cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because of the money. Not because of the humiliation. But because someone I had protected, loved, and saved more times than I could count had done this to me. And he didn't even have the decency to admit it. I called Jake. Once. Twice. 5 times. Straight to voicemail. I texted him, begged him to talk to me. No reply. Then I made the mistake of checking his social media. There he was, lounging on a yacht in Florida, drink in hand, Tiffany in a bikini beside him. They were smiling, laughing. Not a care in the world. Caption: living our best life. My hands were shaking. My lawyer said we'd eventually clear my name, that there was enough proof to show the fraud wasn't mine. But reputations don't heal as fast as court cases. My staff had seen the police at my door. Clients were already whispering. I could feel the respect I had earned slowly eroding, replaced by doubt and gossip. I couldn't even tell my parents. What would I say? That their precious son had stolen from me twice? That he had nearly destroyed the business I gave my life to? Well, I knew what they'd say. He didn't mean it. You're older, be the bigger person. He's still growing, don't turn your back on him. But they didn't know what he'd done. They didn't know I'd already turned my back, and this time I wasn't turning around again. Not ever. Family said forgive him. I said, no. A week after the police showed up at my office, my parents rang my doorbell. I hadn't expected them. I wasn't even sure Jake had told them anything, but when I opened the door and saw my mother's tear-streaked face and my father's tight jaw, I knew. They knew something, but not everything. Can we come in? My mom asked softly, already stepping into the hallway before I could respond. They sat in my living room, clutching each other's hands like they were bracing for a storm. My dad cleared his throat and said, "Sweetheart, Jake told us you're upset. He said it's all a misunderstanding. That you're blowing this out of proportion." I didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. "He said you're trying to press charges over some car loan," my mom added, her voice trembling. $20,000? That can't be right. He wouldn't do that without talking to you. I walked into my office and came back with a thick folder. Quietly, I placed it on the coffee table between us. "What's this?" my dad asked. "Everything," I replied. "Police report. Forged documents. Bank statements. Credit card applications. The debt notices. Everything your son did using my name." My mother reached for the folder hesitantly. As she opened it and began to flip through the pages, I watched the expressions on their faces shift. Confusion turned to disbelief. Disbelief turned to embarrassment. And finally my father whispered, "Oh my God." Page after page showed exactly what Jake had done. He'd forged my signature on car loan papers, used my social security number to open credit cards, maxed them out and disappeared. He hadn't just put my business at risk, he'd gambled with my life's work, my credit and my peace of mind. There was silence in the room. I thought maybe this time they'd see it clearly. Maybe now they'd stop protecting him. But then my mom looked up at me, eyes glassy, and said, "He's your brother." Just like that. Like everything they'd just read didn't matter. Like blood made betrayal easier to swallow. "Please," she continued, "don't do this. Don't press charges. He's going through something. He made a mistake. But to ruin his future over this? To get the police involved?" I almost laughed. A mistake? A $20,000 mistake? Fraud, theft, identity forgery. Those weren't accidents. They were choices. Calculated ones. "He's not a child," I said, keeping my voice calm even though I wanted to scream. "He knew what he was doing. He didn't just steal money. He risked my company, my staff's livelihoods. My credit score dropped 80 points in 1 month. My accounts are still frozen." "But he's your brother," my dad said again, as if repeating it would change the facts. "Exactly," I replied. "And that's what makes this worse." My mom wiped her eyes and said softly, "We just want to keep the family together. If you go through with this, things will never be the same." "They already aren't," I whispered. They begged a little longer. Tried to reason with me. Promised they'd talk to him. Promised he'd pay me back. I didn't argue. I just let them talk. And when they were done, I walked them to the door. "I love you both," I said, holding the door open. "But I won't sacrifice myself for someone who didn't even hesitate to destroy me." They stood there for a moment, stunned. Then my dad stepped outside, followed by my mom, who paused before turning to me. "Think about what you're doing," she said. "One day you'll regret this." I shut the door gently behind them. And then I sat on my couch alone, staring at that folder. Maybe they were right. Maybe things would never be the same. But I had spent my entire life fixing Jake's messes, defending him, helping him, while he kept choosing chaos. This time I wasn't cleaning up after him. This time he was going to face the mess he made. I didn't say a word. But I made a call. The night my parents left, something inside me shifted. I had always been the one who fixed things. Quietly. Swiftly. Without confrontation. But this time fixing it meant holding him accountable. It meant finally accepting that love doesn't mean blind loyalty. It means knowing when to protect yourself. So I called my lawyer. Her name was Michelle, sharp and steady, and she didn't waste time sugarcoating. After hearing the full story, she simply said, "We're going to handle this. But you need to be ready. It's not going to be pretty." "I'm ready," I told her. And I meant it. I gathered every document I had. The car loan forms with the forged signature, credit card statements in my name, emails from the dealership, even texts Jake had sent me asking for money before everything spiraled. I scanned every page and sent them all to Michelle. She filed the charges the next morning. Identity theft. Fraud. Forgery. It felt cold to see it all listed so plainly in black and white. But it also felt like relief. For once I wasn't covering for him. I wasn't cleaning up after him. I was protecting myself. Over the next week we prepared the court documents. Michelle walked me through every step. My business accounts were still under review by the bank, but at least I had legal backing now. I kept everything quiet, didn't post, didn't call, didn't mention a word of it to my family. Not even when my mother left tearful voicemails or when my dad sent long texts saying, "He's young, he'll change." I ignored it all. But I asked Michelle for one specific favor. "Can the arrest happen on a specific date?" I asked. She hesitated. "Technically, yes." "Why?" "Because it's Jake's birthday. There's a family party at Mom and Dad's. He'll be there. They'll all be there. I want them to see it. I want them to understand." He paused for a beat. Then she said, "I'll make the call." Jake's birthday came on a Saturday. The party was at my parents' house, same as every year. They always hosted it in their backyard. Balloons, barbecue, friends from the neighborhood. I didn't go, of course. I hadn't planned to set foot near him. But I parked my car 2 blocks away out of sight. I just needed to be nearby. I needed to see it with my own eyes. At exactly 3:14 p.m., a black police SUV turned onto their street. My heart was pounding even though I wasn't the one being arrested. I watched from a distance as 2 uniformed officers stepped out, calm and focused. They walked through the front gate and into the backyard. I couldn't hear what was said, but I didn't need to. Within moments I saw Jake, wearing a ridiculous birthday king sash, being led out the front door in handcuffs. His face was frozen. He looked around at the small crowd that had followed them out, confused and scared. My mother rushed after them, yelling something I couldn't make out. My father looked like he'd been punched in the chest. Jake tried to say something. The officers didn't let him speak much. They guided him firmly toward the SUV. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just watched. The SUV doors shut. The engine hummed. And slowly they drove away, Jake still wearing that sash, his wrists cuffed, his head hung low. The guests were silent. No one touched the cake. No one said a word. That moment wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about payback. It was about truth. For once they couldn't deny it. Couldn't blame me. Couldn't call it a misunderstanding or an overreaction. They saw it for what it was. Jake had crossed a line and now he was paying for it. I sat in my car for a few more minutes before driving away. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel victorious. But I felt clean. Like I'd finally stopped carrying a weight that was never mine to bear. That night I turned off my phone. I knew the calls would come. The begging. The blaming. The, "How could you do this to your own brother?" But I didn't owe anyone an answer. Not anymore. I didn't save him this time. I saved myself. The next morning my phone was full of voicemails and texts. My mother had called 12 times. My father had left long messages filled with heavy sighs and broken words. And when I finally picked up because I knew I couldn't avoid it forever, the first thing she said was, "How could you do this? You're cruel." Cruel. That word hit me like a stone to the chest. After everything I had done. After everything Jake had taken. Still I was the cruel one. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just let her speak. She went on about how he was crying in the cell, how he was just confused, and didn't mean it. She begged me to drop the charges before things got worse. I took a deep breath. And for the first time in years I didn't hold back. "I'm not the cruel one," I said slowly. "You raised a boy who thought I was his wallet." There was silence on the other end. I gave him everything. Every time he called I answered. Every time he needed help I showed up. I paid his rent, his bills, his bail. I let him stay in my home. I didn't just give him money, I gave him my time, my trust, my peace of mind. And he thanked me by stealing my name. By risking my business. My reputation. My life. Still no response. "You don't get to call me cruel because I finally chose myself," I added. My voice cracked, but I didn't stop. I loved him enough to forgive him, again and again. And he still destroyed everything I worked for. I could hear my mother crying. But I didn't say sorry. Not this time. After that, I stopped answering their calls. Not because I didn't care, but because I had to care about myself more. For once. Jake's trial came quickly. The evidence was solid. The forged signatures, the fake IDs, the stolen accounts. It was all there, clear as day. He stood in court wearing a suit that didn't fit, surrounded by lawyers he couldn't afford. And when the sentence came, 18 months with probation and financial restitution, he didn't look at me once. I sat in the back, quiet and still. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just sat there breathing. After the sentencing, things slowly started to heal. It took time to rebuild my credit. Longer to fix the company's banking relationships. My staff had questions, but they stood by me. I worked harder than I ever had. But this time it wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was just about peace. Rebuilding what I lost. And protecting it with everything I had. I moved Jake's things out of the guest house. Changed the locks. Donated most of it. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't ask their opinion. They stopped reaching out after a while. Maybe they still think I'm cruel. But I know I'm not. I'm someone who finally drew a line. Someone who stopped setting herself on fire just to keep someone else warm. And maybe that's what real strength is. They say blood is thicker than water. But betrayal? Betrayal cuts deeper than both.